welcome to Plus One to Gaming. I'm Chris.
Eric.
I'm Billy.
And I'm Mark.
And we're going to talk about what is D&D? D&D for noobs, basically a guide of how to talk about like what D&D is to people who just aren't familiar with role-playing games, tabletop games, sort of that world in general. I think this is an interesting topic because like someone's like, oh, D&D, what's that? And there might be a lot of preconceived notions, and they may or may not ask you in that voice. I hope not. Let's not perpetuate those stereotypes.
No.
But Bill, you wrote a really cool article about just how to explain D&D to players who are people who aren't familiar with it. Do you want to give us a little bit of insight of what you wrote about?
Yeah. So D&D, it is very hard to describe D&D because it's a lot of things to a lot of people, and like how we talk about their different ways to play it. I mean, in essence, it's a tabletop role-playing game, but what is it if you're trying to explain it to people, give them the old elevator pitch? You said that a lot of people are kind of familiar with it, but they're not really familiar with Dungeons & Dragons. They've heard of it, whether it's like, on certain, like it's kind of pop culture now, but like not really, because the part of D&D that's pop culture is not actually the game. It's more about the concept of like who plays D&D, that it is a thing. And so like, the Big Bang Theory people are going to play Dungeons and Dragons because how else are you going to, push the nerd stereotype? Or the outcasts from Stranger Things, they're kind of the outcast kids that don't have a lot of friends, so they play D&D. So what I think of trying to figure out who you're trying to explain D&D to is the most important thing and the first thing you need to do. And so like I kind of have separated it into 4 like games within the game, and you just pick which game you think is going to spark whoever's interest is, whoever's asking you the question, and that's kind of what you focus on. We do know that it's in essence it is just like the DM sets the chances of something happening, everybody rolls, and then see if that's a success or if it's a failure, and then you just go on from there. It's just continuing series of just that exact scenario. Like all the rules just say what dice apply to and when, and what bonuses or whatever apply when. But it, in essence, is just you do something. It's got a set chance of success. You roll to see if it is a success, and then you just move from there. But does anybody else, before I move on and hog all the spotlight, anybody else have any like thoughts on anything I've said so far?
It'd be fun to hear like everyone, like how would you, if you had 20 seconds, how would you pitch D&D to somebody who had no idea what we do here every Sunday? Eric, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I don't have anything planned, so it is like really on the spot.
But that's exactly like, I think like you're at a party and someone's like, D&D, what's that? And you have to quickly like, who are you? I like what you said, Billy, like know your audience, know your target.
Yes.
Like,
well, I actually just did this recently. If Eric, you want a sec to think about it?
Yeah, go for it.
So I was able to GM my second time, besides the time that I ran you guys through the Star Wars reskin from Candlekeep Mysteries. If you haven't seen that, check out those episodes. So my wife and a friend of hers, we were at a bar, and her friend had been asking like, what's up? How are things going? We were catching up. So, the podcast came up, and she was like, express some interest. And Maddie's like, oh, I've tried it before, because I tried to do a duet game with her, probably prematurely, because duet games are very much a different beast.
Yeah, very hard.
Which someday I want to touch on, but not good enough to even like feel super confident doing that. So maybe that's something, one of my plus ones I'll work on later. But anyway, so my pitch essentially was to focus on like kind of the free form aspect of it, talk about how like Dungeons and Dragons is a collaborative storytelling experience. I made sure to say like it's not us versus you, and it's maybe not even you versus the world as traditional video games might be, because both of them play video games but aren't like Skyrim, Assassin's Creed players, more like myself, like party games and Mario Kart, those kind of games. So anyways, my pitch was that it's collaborative storytelling, so that we all kind of talk about how this adventure goes and then we roll dice to see how combat plays out. And my third pitch was to ground everything in something I thought would be very interesting to them, which is they're both, big animal people. So it's like, and we can do this you don't have to be a goblin or a human fighting goblins. You could be a cat, which my wife had jokingly in the past said, I'd play if you could make me a cat. And I think that was originally before she knew much about D&D, trying to be like, oh, good luck.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh no, hold on. Someone's got that pre-made.
Many people have done this before. You're not alone.
It was a combo for me, was a brief overview of like, don't be afraid of the math and making it seem rules heavy, because it's a story driven thing that is open, and it's so open you can do something as fun and strange as being a sentient animal who wields magic and weapons. And they were like, oh, that sounds much different than what I assumed from a classic. And I'm like, yeah, because it doesn't have to always be classic D&D. You can do what you want. So that's kind of how I got into it with her. And it helps to have someone else there who's at least dipped their toe. Maybe hesitantly helps, because my wife was like, yeah, I've tried it before too. And it would be much more fun if I had a companion there who was also playing, trying to figure it out. She didn't have a party experience, which is my bad. So they kind of nodded and were like, okay, maybe we could be a party. So then from there it was, just leaving enough breadcrumbs to be like, when we saw people again, be like, hey, are you actually interested? Ooh, I bought you a set of dice. You said you didn't have any. Welcome to Dungeons and Dragons. You get gifts.
Yeah. The first set of dice are free.
And then I was like, let's do it in October, because it's got some spooky Halloween vibes. I've got this campaign that's Halloween-y. So I think it's about knowing your audience a lot. I think that's my point.
Totally. Nice. Thanks for sharing that pitch, Mark.
Yeah, that's good.
I think so both of you hit on like really important things. If you're going to be like a D&D ambassador, know your audience like 100%. And like Bill said, like it's different for everybody. I mean, this might be the same point. Like I have had a lot of, through the like pop culture references that Bill listed earlier, like people now know a lot more about it than they did when we started playing. Like, I can't even remember if there like what pop culture references like there were when we started.
They weren't generally positive. Like,
they weren't generally positive.
Typically always had negative stigma.
Yeah. But even like, I think like Bill was pretty astute I think they still kind of aren't necessarily positive.
No.
It still plays into the trope of like, this is for nerds.
Yeah.
And it's like, you look at a guy like Vin Diesel, like, oh, he's really cool, but he also plays D&D. Like, it's like,
but instead of he's like, he's really cool and he plays.
It's a juxtaposition and like duality of man, and not like yes.
Or like, did you see Stephen Colbert? He did D&D. Like, it's almost like this guilty pleasure.
How unlike him, because he's popular and outgoing.
Yeah, but if you said like, and he also works on cars, like a nerd, like that wouldn't, it doesn't have the exact, it's like a different connotation. That makes you cooler. Oh, he works on his own motorcycle. Yeah, like a nerd.
Mm-hmm.
He writes his own D&D campaigns.
Like a cool guy.
That's nice.
So that, I feel like a lot of us, I don't know, I have a lot of thoughts going right now. Our like
pick 20 seconds worth.
Yeah, our exact generation, like we've known about it our whole life, and I feel like just recently it's kind of opened up. So a lot of us are curious, but you have a lot of stigma to get over, and that's like a lot. That's a lot on a 20-second elevator pitch. No, so I do. Like similar to Mark, I don't think I would ever say collaborative storytelling, because people are like, oh yeah, nerd shit. So like, I don't know. And a lot of people our age like play board games too. So like, I would probably go more that way. It's like board gamey, video gamey, but you can drive it, you can create whatever. And a lot of it's like, hanging out with your buds.
Yep.
Like that I think is the sell that I have more than like the mechanics, way more than the mechanics.
Oh, absolutely.
And really more than like the fantasy of it. It's because that's what I mean. We've played all different genres. Like I like the hanging out with you guys and like the free form of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice.
Ultimately, that needs to be like the biggest draw is be hanging out and playing together with friends, because there's a lot of one-player experiences.
Otherwise I'm just going to play God of War.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I've always expected people to get there once they started, but I've never actually. I mean, I've said before, like, oh, it usually just turns into people dicking around for a fair amount of time, but I've never personally thought of that as a draw.
Yeah,
because I assume people are like want to be gamey, but then they like. For instance, when the ladies finished the thing they were doing, the little one shot, we're like, oh, there was a lot of just like laughing and dicking around. Yeah. That might have been the best part.
Yeah,
Sorry. And I'm like, nope, that's like exact surprise.
Yeah.
None of this actually matters. It's just an excuse to like have some beers and like hang out.
Yeah. There's a lot of ways to hang out with your friends. So that's what I kind of like when I wrote this, and like my idea was like, you already are with a group of friends.
Yeah.
Like, because I have friends that don't like that would want to do other stuff. They have nothing against hanging out with me and they have a good time hanging out, but they just, if I'm going to hang out with them, I'd rather be doing this than D&D. And so like the biggest draw obviously is no matter how good that session is, if you don't like the people you're playing with, it's going to be bad.
Yeah.
So here's a challenge. How do you pitch someone like at a game store or something if you're doing random games or a cousin or somebody that you're not like super tight with?
I don't really I don't try to like, if anybody pitches, like nobody asks me, like some random stranger, like, why do you play D&D? And then you can give like a generic answer, like, oh, it's a really fun time to hang out and play with my friends. Like you give a boxed answer for a boxed question. But like if I'm really
like I have a friend I've been trying to convince to try it for years. He's not into it. But like the thing is, he's an actor. Stage actor, has been has done video stuff with me before, isn't comfortable with those kind of things, and not the type of person you think of as like, oh, I would be embarrassed or anything like that. Just so it's just funny because we've been ribbing back and forth for years. I'm like, you are purpose made to do this, and he's like, I'm not, and you sell me on it and I'll do it, is his thing. So I've tried different pitches. I think mostly he just wants to say no to me over and over.
Stick around for this. So we'll get into get into the pitches. So I've split up into 4 games, and like the 4 like categories of people that that I think like a lot of people have a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, but in general, you have like the 4 aspects of the game that we talk about. So like the first one, like for that person who loves playing games, like D&D is a strategy game. It is something that you can gamify, you can optimize. Those are the min-maxers. Like
that's its roots. Its roots was not role playing. It wasn't storytelling. It was like tactical wargaming.
It was a war strategy game. Yeah. So, and that's some people still like, especially older people, love that aspect. They're the ones that have like all the miniatures and they whip out rulers and stuff. Like, and that works for them. And if your friend really likes strategy game, plays a lot of games, loves to read those, like optimizing your characters, like talk to him about like a blade lock or something, or an assassin rogue, like these really cool optimized characters that like you can use to gamify the system, like that are almost, in my opinion, some of them are, those builds are broken because you're gamifying the system. Like you find the flaws in the system and you poke at them. And I mean, I don't like them just because I don't see it as a strategy game. But if everybody sees it as a strategy game, then you're fine with doing this. So
if your friends are playing Warhammer on the weekends, take this approach. Like that's
and talk to them about like all the cool builds you can have and all the cool like specs and things like that.
So the thing is, like, this is what got me interested when we started playing over a decade ago. It was WoW. Yep. And WoW is like, it's not necessary. I mean, it's an MMO RPG. I was feeling like there was strategy in there. I'm going to say RPGs.
Yeah, I think you're falling into more column 4 or column D.
Well, I haven't read this. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because this is like the you're measuring the distance, like cover,
Oh yeah.
like
That
all
is
of the
not me.
gritty details of
Yeah.
combat you're accounting for.
Yeah.
Your formula calculations for rolling are like this long.
Yeah, that ain't me.
Yeah, like if you're focused on like, oh, if I do it this way, I have a 1/16th better chance of critting in this special occasion. Like
Yeah.
rebuilding your whole character for that. Like that is like you love those math and those numbers. Like you are trying to gamify the system. It's like you win if you make the best character. Like it doesn't matter. Like that's once you make the character, then you've already won. Then you're just going through and then like and doing that character that's already perfect. It's I mean, that's not how we play.
Yeah.
I'm all for if somebody wants to play it, but like somebody who like wants to play it that way, I can tell them about it. I just won't really invite them to my game. Or if I did play a game specifically for them, I would, you kind of throw those aspects a little higher up so that they get hooked. And then you can always try to change them into some other player, like get them hooked on it with the strategy, and then like have them start doing voices. Yeah,
especially for new players in particular. If you're pitching it, it also doesn't quite matter what someone is interested in on the onset, as long as it exists and it's true in the game. Don't let them make stuff up just to bamboozle them into spending 5 hours at your kitchen table.
Don't be disingenuous.
You may think genuinely, oh, I used to play MMOs where I was really interested in the best gear, so maybe what I am is a strategic player. And then you get in there and you're like, actually no.
Yeah,
now that I've done it.
And you can be completely separate. Like Mac is the strategic gamer for WoW. Like he's obsessed with getting the best gear. But when he plays Dungeons and Dragons, he is not at all optimized. He is the number 2, which we're talking about. I know Chris walked away. But
I'm wearing, and wow, I'm wearing mismatched armor because it looks cool together.
Yeah.
And he will wear mismatched armor because each has its own bonus.
Yeah, this is optimized.
The best.
I ran the numbers, and this optimizes the things that are important to me. He even got mad at me because in early WoW, I wanted to be a fire mage, and they were the worst kinds of mages. I'm like, but fire mages I think are cool. I don't want to keep having to change every single time they nerf something.
This is interesting because I think, I don't know. I've known people who are like so much more that really are like have spreadsheets for WoW. And especially like nowadays when you go back to
the only people left.
Yeah, there's the only people left. So like I got when like the new WoW came out, or the new old WoW, whatever it's called, WoW Classic came out. I got kicked out of my guild, basically, because I was like optimal. I was like not performing at like optimal levels.
You got to bring up your DPS numbers, Eric.
Yeah,
that's what happened to me in your guild when we used to play. Is that I was in your guild, but not really, because you wouldn't invite me to shit.
You have to bring up your performance numbers.
So the thing is, like, we were clearing, like we were doing things easily. Yeah. And like after a run, they had a talk with me, like I was being pulled into the manager's office.
Jesus.
And I was like, I quit. I'm not doing this.
Yeah, this is not a game. I'm not here to work.
So if you are that type of person,
this works for you.
This works for you.
Yeah, but for like the way that I think your actor would maybe get into it, and it maybe not the actor. I think maybe number 3 for them, the collaborative storytelling, but like the sandbox aspect of it. Like it is the ultimate sandbox game. Like the people that can hop on Red Dead Redemption or Grand Theft Auto and just don't do anything for fucking like I already beat this. I don't have any more missions. I just go over there and fuck around.
Play 80 hours, but doing nothing.
Nothing. Like this is the ultimate sandbox game. Like that is the people that you can literally do anything. And like it does make it harder work for the DM if people are like their whole goal, and is that I'm going to try to throw a wrench into this system because I'm going to at any time take a sharp left turn. But like if you're down with that and everybody expects that, it can be fun. Like
and these are your people who, to keep the theme going, love The Sims.
Yeah.
Who like things
or like Animal Crossing.
Life. Animal Crossing.
Yeah, they're the ones that want to do yeah, they love the sandbox and be able to do anything. They may like not want to do, they may want to set up their own, village and worry
Yeah.
about that kind of stuff.
And
instead
heads
of
up,
like,
you need a lot of
who
NPCs.
cares about
Look
the
up
dragon?
pre-made NPC sheets.
Yeah. And if that's what they want to do, like, oh, take a break from this, and I want to do like my, like side sessions or whatever are going to become the main thing that my character is interested in.
Yeah.
Like, I really am only fighting the dragon because I have to. I really want to run an effective fight, merchant guild.
Decorate
like,
my stronghold.
okay, cool. And you have some of those, and we've played with them, like the people that like they try to be like contrarian or like think of the strangest and weirdest thing ever, like and those are the people that are like, oh, gotcha, like you're on the hook because like, oh, you think that that's weird or cool? Like,
Yeah.
wait till you've seen Al Gore, the
Man bear pig.
the man bear pig druid that
Excelsior.
somebody's played. Yeah, like
Yeah, wait until I yes and your weird idea.
yeah, oh yeah, we just keep going off on it where he would. His druidic transformation took 10 minutes because he had to strap on like legs and stuff, like fake hooves. That was awesome. We had such a good time with that. But like, that is like, you can't really get more sandbox than something where you can literally do anything.
Yeah.
And so like, it does scare some people because there are no constraints, but there are no official constraints. But I think for all of us, like we kind of definitely fall into like the third category, which is that collaborative storytelling system. I don't want to keep going on it because we talk about it all the time. Like that's the main goal, is that we want to tell a good story. And we want to do the accents. Like I'm working on them. They're not great. But like, that's kind of fun. Like, I care about my character build, not just because of the things he can do, but who he is. Like that's, who he is as a person, as an actual character in the story. Like that's the biggest draw, is I'm gonna make an interesting character and see how he interacts with this ongoing environment and story. So I think, I'm sure you've already talked about the actor, but if he really wants to get into a role, like give him a really cool character to play.
Give him a role he can't refuse.
Give him a role he can't refuse.
I've thought about trying to, because we have a lot of mutual friends, perhaps giving him an like NPC to voice or play where he's not actually doing it, but just like, hey man, give me a get the positive reinforcement of other people being like, oh, that was cool.
You
had a little like video clip of our friend or something, like
exactly.
You gotta hook people, find them where they are, and then be relentless. It's going on like 6 years now. So
the long game, Mark. It's the long game.
It is.
It's like any other relationship. You have to be annoying and relentless. Never get up and talk about your nerd shit constantly. And eventually they break.
Yeah.
Reach.
So
just like
religion. It's they will break if you give them a long
they're
enough.
all
Like
fandoms.
Try. Like I'm convinced that if anybody tries it and it's run right, like run well in their interests, that they'll be hooked. Like it's such a good system that like you just have to get over the hump and get them into the table, and then just not have a terrible person that they're playing with or something that just ruins the experience for them. Like if they just have a good experience, they'll want to come back.
Well, that's a good point, because we also preach a lot about it being your responsibility to make people have a good time.
Yep.
So like, and that goes back to your point, which is why it's worth having these categories in mind. Not that you want to categorize people or assume they're always going to like one thing, but you want to make your game honed to who's at your table.
Yep,
absolutely. You're playing to your audience. When you're the DM, you're playing to your audience. And even if you're a player, like if you all have you want to have the same goal, and I don't mean like goal as in like goal that your characters want to do, like kill this dragon, but like goal as players of, I want to tell a good story, or I want to make the most effective party, or like
I want tons of combat, or I don't.
We just want to smash goblins, just destroy, and those are the ones that you just give them waves of low-level enemies, so they just feel like badasses as they're one-shotting everybody. That's what they want to see. They want to feel like a badass, and so you give them that badass feeling. That you hit that dopamine button, bam, bam, bam. But there's one that I threw in so those are the three that I came up with right away, because those are the ones we always talk about. But when I was talking about how I got hooked, I was number 4. I was a fantasy fan. I got hooked because I read the Forgotten Realms books before I played Dungeons and Dragons. I read almost all of the Drizzt series, and then I knew it was in the universe, but it's like, yeah, it's cool. It's a really cool universe. I don't really want to play the game, but the stuff that they have come up is really cool. But the more you get into it, especially if you have somebody who reads those Dungeons and Dragons, like whether it's Forgotten Realms, Dragonlance, all those other like set books, or if they read the Star Wars novels, and now if you have Game of Thrones, you have Lord of the Rings, you have the Witcher series, which is a book turned video game turned TV series, the Wheel of Time. I could keep going on and on. Like fantasy adventures are in the norm. It's not like those, like back in the day when like only the nerds read the Lord of the Rings. Like there was like a joke about it in like Friends in like the 90s that like, we call our friend Gandalf. Oh, you don't get it because you didn't read Lord of the Rings. I'm like, now everybody know who the fuck Gandalf is. Like,
Gandalf's mainstream.
Gandalf is mainstream, and so
I like Gandalf before he was cool.
I liked him before he was cool. But like those people that are hooked on the adventure, like they want to be part of this grandiose adventure, and so like they don't want to be storytelling as much as story living. They want to be in the story, and a lot of people like. If
Put
you're
that on a shirt, shit.
I'm story living.
I'm story living. Hashtag story living.
But I think about it for like in the Star Wars, when we reskin for Star Wars, we're not going to reinvent Star Wars shit. We want to live in that Star Wars world. Like that's when we skin it. Like we're not changing anything. Like all that stuff's canon. We're writing a story in the Star Wars universe, but really what we're doing is we're playing out a fucking adventure in Star Wars. Like I've always wanted to do that when I was a kid, Every kid had a lightsaber growing up.
Yeah, leaving every movie. Like, can we go to the toy store? Because I want to go out in the backyard and put on the cape and or buy the new blaster or whatever.
I don't mind this Chewbacca mask. It's not movie quality.
Yeah.
from a nice. The Bengals just scored a touchdown. The game. The Bengals game started like 7 minutes ago. Nice. They're going to win, so I'm not super worried about missing part of it. And they already scored a touchdown.
See, not all nerds are the same.
Right. I love sports. I play fantasy football and fantasy. I like. I like sports.
Fantasy. I can never figure out. There's too many rules for fantasy football. Like I never know when to roll initiative.
It's too complicated. I can play Dungeons and Dragons, but fantasy football, that's where I draw the line. It's too nerdy.
Can't figure it out.
So like years and years ago, I can't remember who it was, but I was hanging out with like a group of people, and I had to get somewhere to go play D&D with Chris. I think when we played at like the store.
Oh yeah. Villainous Lair.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, I gotta go. I gotta meet up with some guys. And he's like, oh, is it like fantasy? And I was like, it is. How did you? And then I realized he's like, oh, he means fantasy football, and I have to abandon this conversation ASAP.
It's fantasy.
There's no way to recover from this.
Because everyone is making assumptions that are all incorrect.
It was like one of the weirdest interactions I've ever had with somebody.
Because you don't want to let him know you don't want to pretend you're playing fantasy football, because then he's going to want to talk to you about fantasy football.
Yeah,
that's the thing. One more sentence, and the whole thing like blows up. Like this
you had to like immediately like put on the brakes. Like nobody,
it was so weird.
And hope he doesn't know that you put on the brakes.
Yeah, I don't think he had the emotional intelligence to figure out what happened. But yeah, it was weird.
Funny.
I mean, I think definitely originally I fell into the number 4. Like I didn't read the Drizzt books until maybe after the very first time, but I definitely read them before we played like regularly.
Yeah, because we were living in New Orleans together when I gave you all of those books.
Yeah,
because I had them all, and then I just let you borrow them. And you read through them. I mean, they're not. It's not War and Peace, you can read through them pretty quick.
The thing is, though, the ones you had were 3 books in one, so they were thick.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're fun, quick reads. They're like plot driven.
Yep. Yeah. They're awesome. I love them.
But I grew up loving, like Robin Hood, loving Lord of the Rings, loving Princess Bride, Zelda, like all that like fantasy sword shit. I never knew about Dungeons and Dragons as a kid, and like it's a weird regret because I would have fucking loved to read the monster manual as a kid. I
But
love
we
those
would've-
like compendiums.
We would have had so much fun. Like after band practice, we would play Dungeons and Dragons, like in the same garage. Like we would have just got like in my shitty, like falling apart, raccoon infested garage in high school. If we would have played Dungeons and Dragons after band practice,
because what we did instead was the weirdest attempt. Where I would bring my TV and Xbox over, and we would play Morrowind just next to each other,
because they
running down the same road, doing the same quests,
like, pretending that we're involved with each other because they are absolutely single player. And so, like, we're doing the same quest at the same time independently.
Yeah, so like that was just such a dream come true, kind of like you said. Like I get to live in this world. I get to like immerse myself and do the things that video games are limited on, or even just like playing outside with like sticks as swords is limited. It like really got to, it's the best we're gonna get at that,
and that works. Like if we would have done that, and it's not that hard if you're in number 4, because there's so much stuff. Like you can buy, like Roll20, you can buy a pre-written campaign and all the assets, which includes the maps, the NPCs, all that stuff, for like $30 to $50, which it sounds like a lot, but like if it's 100 hours of gameplay within 4 people and you all split it up, it's
that's easy.
It is a bargain.
The thing is, like it doesn't necessarily have to be fantasy. Like again, we've played Cyberpunk, we played Star Wars, we like whatever. Like it could be. I mean, we played 1963, like Pittsburgh, like whatever you're really into. Like you can really like drive it to the finish line with like collaborative role playing, D&D, or one of the other. D&D might not be the exact right system for you, but like.
Like the rules are there just to help give structure and meaning and framework to the world, to help that push that story along and give you the moments. But like you said, you really like, we try not to focus too much on the rules, but really find the rule set that allows the expression that, or the experience you want to have.
Yep. I think I think you're spot on with that. And like I know that like we're trying to get away from like the super nerdy and like negative stereotypes, but like in essence it's like interactive what do you call it? What fanfic? Like that's basically what we're doing is, fanfic has like this negative connotation. I don't think it's negative. I think it's really, really cool. Because that's what we're doing. We're telling a story inside of an already created universe. Well, if you're playing in the Forgotten Realms or the Star Wars, you're reskinning, you're just making your own fanfic with your friends. Like, in essence, like, and it is, I like the concept that you have with the rules. I'm a little bit more sticker with the rules than some people are, because I think the rules add conflict, because like a lot of times, like those restraints that the rules give you add conflict, because then you have to start thinking not just tactically, but to start, if you can do it. It's like when you're playing pretend with your friends, which I talked about at the beginning. Like this is basically like adult pretend.
Yeah, well, actually, like it's a good thought experiment, because if you do play pretend, I don't know if you ever had this game where you're playing and it's like, oh, I shot you with my flamethrower. Oh, well, I have a flamethrower repellent shirt on. Well, my flamethrower is
ball.
And it's always just like power scaling.
Well, I mean, there was this guy I knew in high school that when he played airsoft and got shot, he would never admit that he got shot. I don't know who that guy is.
Oh, you mean every guy you played with in high school?
Yeah.
They probably had those BB repellent BDUs on.
Yeah. So it'd be cool is if we didn't play paintball, so that way we could just play Infinite.
Yeah, you could just say. Yeah.
Forever.
I mean, you always have. I mean, when you play pretend, you always have that friend who are like, will always one up you. Like, like they're doing not yes and, that's a no but. Yeah. Very early on, you realize that yes and is way more fun than no but.
Yeah.
But like having pretend with a little bit of constraint makes pretend more fun, because you can like, there are now like, instead of you having to manufacture consequences, like that is all it like it makes you like, the rules make you make decisions, and decisions is where conflict comes from. Is am I making the right decision? Like whenever you guys like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, You don't know what to do.
That's why I
Awesome.
like the
I love it.
collaborative word, because I feel like it signals that, like, you know, we're in this together. So when I, as a GM, say, okay, I will let you do that outside of the rules, perhaps, but what's the downside?
Yeah,
And when you
what's the
start
cost?
to say that there are consequences, it feels like tension and not punishment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
A
You're
really
not
good
trying to
distinction.
punish. Yeah, like when we just played, like I didn't want to punish Eric's character for walking in front, but like that added a little bit of tension. Like, oh, we're in like a narrow hallway. Like I rolled it like a 50-50 chance that maybe he's not in the realm, but maybe he is. You know, like you don't really know. And like that's the kind of thing that you could just like every single time you just hand wave like, oh no, it's fine, or oh, can I reach there? Yeah, you're close enough, just go. But like it having that little bit where like, I don't know, are you close enough? Like even if it's just like, you know, you're not gonna do the math, you're just like roll a d6 and anything higher than like if you get anything higher than a 2, then you made it, but a 1 or a 2, you didn't make it. You know, like adds a little bit of that, like, oh man, it adds that conflict and that. So I love it, which is also why I know we're going off of this. So I like cross table talk because you're adding like conflict between like at the not just in the world, but at the table. Like when you're like, I think you should do this. Like, no, I think you should do this. Like, especially like I have to make a decision and one's going to help this friend and one's going to help this friend. Like you're both trying to sell your points. Like, oh no, this is why you should help me. Oh, this is why you should help me. Like, I'm never going to be one to be like, all right, you guys can't actually have a chit chat. Like, I'll let it go, and then eventually I'll be like, okay, you got to make a decision.
But that's like the ticking clock. Like that's the tension again. Like building. Like if you let us talk forever, then there's no tension.
Yeah, but not letting them talk at all is like then there's no tension because like you guys aren't. Yeah, because then you're just independently. Like if you can't discuss, like I think you should do this. Like, oh well, your guy wouldn't talk about this or wouldn't know this is going to happen. Like yeah, but that's not as much fun. Yeah. It's way more fun when your guys know what your guy can do and just trying to tell me, like, oh man, I know you can do a heal, so you should probably heal me. Like, I think that's fun. But
no, it's a great way to round it out. And I think just having different frameworks, different perspectives, and knowing how to know who you're talking to and what might resonate with them, and then pulling out those aspects of D&D that you can kind of like cherry pick in a sense. And if you're trying to, if your ultimate goal is to eventually get them at your table, then it goes into like more zero session of you're figuring out what turns them on, what turns them off, and then building that with other players at your table to create an experience that everyone can enjoy. So there's definitely some like investigation checks going on in this process. Bill, thanks so much for writing this article. You can check it out on our website, +1togaming.com. Otherwise, we will catch you next time. That's it for this week's episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, and head over to +1togaming.com for more live discussions, actual plays, character creation tips, and more. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.